Hey everybody, Edo here, and I am excited tonight because I have Nalin Chuapetcharasopon, perhaps, something like that. I apologize, it's a long last name. But say hello, founder of Meeple Marketing.
Hi everyone, and that was really great. Nalin Chuapetcharasopon, that was super close. So thank you for trying that and really pronouncing it really well.
Awesome. Well, thank you for saying so, but I also know I butchered it. But anyway, so actually, Anna Maria connected us, and I think I've seen you in a variety of places over the years, but I actually hadn't really gone and looked at Meeple Marketing, and for me to summarize it, it's really this source of a variety of resources on how to market and run and launch a Kickstarter. But like, how would you describe Meeple Marketing to somebody who's never seen it before?
Yeah, so I would exactly kind of say that, right? My passion is in marketing, and my passion is also in crowdfunding and games in general. And so it all kind of came together in what I now house under Meeple Marketing with courses, like resources, books, and also a really kind of engaged group where a lot of people come together and talk marketing and talk launching games.
Yeah, well, and that's always exciting, right? Especially if it's your first time. Um,
Yeah.
but so okay, but one of the things I like to do on these Q&As is sort of start with how you got into games and then how that led to sort of starting this site and the Facebook group. So what's your journey? What's your story?
Yeah, I love it. So games actually started when I met my wife, not girlfriend, now wife, in grad school. We met and we played Dominion together,
All right.
actually. And then she was super into games. She went to like local game groups when we were in the San Francisco Bay Area and kind of got me hooked too in the games, right? And so now we have a huge shelf of games. We play games together every single weekend, have like a game group that we play with outside pandemic times and things like
Sure,
that.
sure.
Um, and beyond that, I never thought of it as kind of a career path or anything like that. I've always been just in general interested in crowdfunding. I've worked in crowdfunding since 2015, working in agencies, launching projects on crowdfunding. Now as a consultant too, launching stuff on crowdfunding. And then one day I was browsing games on Kickstarter, and then I was like, huh. There's lots of games on Kickstarter that I back anyway. What's it like to like for people to learn how to market and do all this crowdfunding stuff with games? And so I started looking. I read about, read James Matthews' blogs. I read Jamie's book in a night. I, started reading all these things, and I was like, there's some space to kind of put really kind of more updated information, right? Because a lot of people like Jamie's like doing other things now, for example,
Sure,
right?
sure. Yeah, he's
So
he's moved on.
yeah,
And actually,
yeah.
unfortunately, James has passed. But
Mhm.
yeah, so both of those giants are sort of out of the Kickstarter scene right now.
Yeah, exactly. And I really looked up to a lot of the articles and all the things that they wrote because it was really informative. I consumed pretty much all their articles, right? And I was like, there's a lot of opportunity here. I love writing anyway. I blog every single week for my own Crush crowdfunding blog. And so I started writing and I went to a lot of these game groups and I was like, hey, if someone wants to, I literally asked, I still have a screenshot of the first post that I had in like April of 2020, right? I said, hey, if you wanted to like learn about marketing, crowdfunding, like if I like wrote about it, would you want to learn something about it or like hear me out? And people said, yeah, 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 yeah. And so I did. I started just writing short little posts about like how marketing and crowdfunding and launching and games all intersect, and people kind of really enjoyed it. And so it kind of spiraled from there into what it is now.
Oh, that's awesome! And just to help me, so what other if it wasn't board games, what type of crowdsourcing type things were you doing before that? And when you're like, I was working in what, there aren't that many people I think who would say they were working in crowdsourcing. What did that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So I actually worked in an agency
Okay,
to launch projects on crowdfunding. This was in the Bay Area, and then I
like just to clarify, like an agency supporting Kickstarter creators, or you were actually the agency was launching products.
an agency supporting Kickstarter and
Okay,
Indiegogo creators.
okay. So
Yeah,
so you were basically doing the a similar job, just working for a company doing it.
yeah, yeah. And then another company in the Bay Area too was like, "Hey, we want to launch our products on crowdfunding. Do you want to come work for us?" And so I was like, "Okay, sure. let's work together doing that. And then once they started going towards B2B things, I unfortunately was not interested in B2B, and then they knew I wasn't interested in B2B. And so when they were kind of streamlining, making sure that their projects were, working according to their B2B plans, I was let go. And It was devastating, right? And then one day someone reached out on LinkedIn, actually, and someone was like, hey, you have some crowdfunding experience. Do you want to kind of talk to you for a little bit? And it was a 30-minute call, but then it ended up being just 2 hours of me just kind of pacing around the living room, talking about crowdfunding and kind of telling people things that I knew about crowdfunding to them. And I was like, wait a minute. In general, I just like crowdfunding. So why not just kind of jump into that? And so I started doing that full time by myself, helping people, consulting, things like that. And then it was just last year when all this gaming stuff started.
Right.
But to answer your question too, what kind of products I launched? I for example, this phone case I actually launched on Indiegogo. There's a smart projector that I have downstairs in my basement. I also launched, there's apparel, jackets that are kind of Columbia, Patagonia type of jackets I also launched. So various different categories, but it was never games.
Right. And in terms of the agency work, because we're about to roll into all this stuff here, but because I just it's interesting to me, because at one point or another, I've different agencies have approached me or other folks, and there's always things that are not really agencies, but they move into BackerKit or news or mailing lists. But in terms of the typical work you were doing in those roles, or even in the consulting work outside was it really about? Was it the full, when we in the Meeple Marketing, you sort of cover the full spectrum. Was it the full spectrum, which is reach out, building up your audience, the campaign, your messaging? Was it the marketing? Was it the whole spectrum, or was it more specific than that?
Yeah. In my background, I did the full spectrum. I did everything from talking to engineers to say, hey, this is what our surveys indicate about the product. We need to change it a little bit just to make sure that the product matches what the audience is looking for example, right? Naming different parts of the product even. For example, with this phone case, right? There's a material within the actual sides that protect it from the fall, from the shock. And so I named that, and I was like, hey, we did surveys to name it, and did all these things in order to name it Aero Shock, for example. So that was from the product side. I also did things like manage a design team, right? Okay, here's what it's like to build a converting landing page. Here's what it's to build a converting crowdfunding page. And kind of all these different teams kind of worked with me in order to put a product to life, right? Figuring out pricing, landed costs, what the COGS are for products. And
so even support in the actual, not necessarily pricing, but the actual manufacturing and helping the product come from idea to market.
Yeah. Which, interesting. Long process, but really exciting, I think. And that's why I think I stuck with it.
And actually, I think it's worth highlighting just the word you were using in there, because I don't think it's in everyone's parlance, which is a converting landing page, right? Mm-hmm. And specifically that word converting means, hey, somebody's come to your page and they converted or became a buyer or a backer or a pledger, right? So that's what that's calling out. And you use that in all sorts of things with marketing and otherwise. But okay, so you're board games meet crowdfunding meet opportunity. And did you start with the website, or did you start with the Facebook group? Because the website, in addition to providing resources, you're actually selling things and building a business here. So I'm curious how it sort of ratcheted up from just that idea.
Yeah. It started with the group, for sure, the group. And a lot of people ask me about, what they need to start a business, right? And I always think about MVP, right? Minimal viable product. What is the smallest thing that you can do to make it work, right? And for me, it was literally having a group and having community and having a target audience who loved games and wanted to launch their own games, right? And I wanted to understand more of the marketing part. And so I started with the group, for sure. The group was on for about 3 months, even before the site came live, I believe, if I remember correctly from last year. As the group was there, I made sure to produce content consistently. Every Monday, now I have Marketing Tip Monday, right? Where every Monday I write a short little tip about marketing and ask questions. Are you doing this? What do you think? Let's discuss, just to get people's kind of creative juices running, right? Talk about it Tuesday. What's the new Kickstarter that's coming up? So all this kind of evolved with the group. Sure. And in the background, I was building up this site, right? More long form content, like articles with like 1,500 words or more. Like some articles I was writing over like 3,000 words or something like that, just to make sure that all this marketing knowledge was, we could go into detail too. Like, for example, how to use Facebook groups effectively, how to even set Facebook groups, the difference between Facebook groups and Facebook pages, right? Things like that people were always asking, and I wanted to get in more detail too.
Right.
So these two things kind of came hand in hand, but one after the other.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so then you're doing the group, you're building it out. I mean, it's pretty sizable. I was just looking at it while you were talking about it. And then you start building the website, and the website's again is marketing at you. It's got a certain vibe of like, dragging you into the content and engaging with you, which is good. And then so you're doing the blogs, and then when did you start bringing in the resources that you like, the toolkits, and like okay, actually to start, because not everyone listening has the site in front of them. Why don't you talk about the key aspects of Meeple Marketing, like what you're offering?
Okay, yeah. Within Meeple Marketing, there's, again, the group where community kind of happens. Everyone's here talking, chatting. There's prompts pretty much every day to get you thinking, get you sharing, get you practicing how to share without being spammy too. That's kind of like the goal of everything. The site, long form content, also houses the podcast. Right, the podcast is, again, where I interview successful Kickstarter creators and successful game launchers, and who want to kind of give back and talk about their game and tell people this is how I did it. Because at the end of the day, there's a formula, but not really. Everyone goes about it in a different way, and so that's where all the kind of like really exciting stuff comes out. Because just like what you're doing now, I get to ask the hard questions. And I'm like, what did you spend?
Right.
Right. Like, how did you do this? How, people were sending messages to 5,000 people in order to get their campaign funded, for example. Right, so learning cool things like that. And it's, again, those three main things that you find under Meeple Marketing, as well as the educational resources that you're talking about too, that are, again, paid.
Right. And then, and I was looking, I think those are pretty interesting, right? The people, I think you can go through and look at your podcast or your the blog. And, I think if you're somebody who's familiar with the board gaming Kickstarter space, you're going to see a lot of folks and names that you're familiar with. Right. And so, in many ways, I think that's both interesting, but there are folks doing podcasts and blogs. Right. The thing that, caught my eye more from my perspective was, in some ways these different toolkits, both because you're selling them, which is interesting to me, but also looking at how you break down what, this marketing toolkit as an example, right? You break down the different pieces that are in there, and just to read it, because I think it's even just you can learn something just reading your table of contents, honestly. You have the landing page creation pack, email marketing guide, organic marketing guide, advertising mastery, reviewer outreach pack, medium press guide, page build pack, bonus, it goes on and on. How, okay, and so is this, have you, prior to you pulling this together, had you been part of a group that built and sold these sort of info booklets, or did you sort of come up on this on your own as you were doing it? How were you I think I can assemble these templates and things and turn it into a resource that I can sell? How did you come around on that?
That's a great question. I think that more comes from my entrepreneurial side, right? We were talking about this earlier, but my main consulting job is through a brand called Crush Crowdfunding, where I really talk more to general product creators, right? Not games in particular, just any other type of product creation. And there, I've actually been doing that since 2017 now. So it's been a while. So I've also built out these digital products, the game designer marketing toolkit that you're talking about, right? So a lot of people come to me and they're like, hey, Nalin, I really want to just have something that just can guide me, can help me, right? Something I can just take, there's all this information, I'm never a closed book. If you ask me a question, I'm going to tell you the answer, right? All the information I'm going to tell you in the game design marketing toolkit is out there. I've talked about it. I talk about it publicly on podcasts, in the group, things like that. Kind of the thing that separates this from all the free content that's out there is the order and the structure, right?
Sure.
And that's what I believe personally that education can do, right? Education should be free. But if someone wants that additional structure, that additional like step by step, that additional like this is the first thing you should do, this is the second thing you should do, this is how you should kind of conceptualize the whole thing from end to end, then that is what like the Game Design and Marketing Toolkit or the Launch Marketing Roadmap books, that's what it offers for people, right? And so just to take it back to your original question, I've been doing this in my other business for a while now, and people have just been like, taking these resources like checklists that I create, like on launch day. What do you have to do? People just download the checklist and they go and like do it. Check. They're done. They don't need me, right? They just need that kind of step by step thing.
No, I think they're good resources, right? Like I obviously have this channel and I've done a bunch of like how-tos and advice types of things, and, I've certainly touched on or talked about a lot of these products, but I haven't spent the time to build out, some property around, hey, here's a checklist, here's a list of how to do that, all those different pieces. I guess also I'm curious, I assume ultimately they're just PDFs inside there or something. Like, how do you actually, what is digital right protection like on that kind of material?
That's a good question. So it was initially just PDFs. That's how I started, right? MVP, always minimal viable product. What can you get out the door as quick as possible to put your ideas down? That's kind of like my go-to as entrepreneur.
Right.
Recently, there's videos now. And so I just recorded lots of videos about things like how to set up a Facebook pixel, how to actually install that on your page, how do you actually create lookalike audiences, how do you build saved audiences, and all these things that people I found have a lot of trouble with, and they pay agencies thousands of dollars and things like that, although they want to do it themselves or they want to learn how to do it themselves before they hire an agency, right? So now there are videos too. In terms of like protection, I personally am not sure. I'm going to be honest. I'm not sure. I put, copyright, my business at the bottom of everything. But if people are going to rip stuff off, they're going to rip stuff off.
At some point, right, ultimately, it's not that expensive, right? So I think for somebody who, people are going to steal all sorts of things. But I think generally, if you're getting a value from somebody, it's pretty good to support what they're doing. Okay, and so how much? So you're running this Facebook group. I'm sure you've got admins or other ones, people, but you're like doing the content on the Monday, all the different days, and driving the conversation, and presumably like paying attention to the market and what's happening on Kickstarter and the latest releases. And then you have this sort of self-service content that presumably you're making available, but leveling up and updating and adding to over time. And then you have the podcast. Does that sort of represent your day-to-day, or are you also doing... for a while, there was like the Kickstarter specialists or the Kickstarter advisors, or there was some like program Kickstarter was supporting where they were connecting people with consultants to like
Kickstarter like experts list or something.
So are you also doing project by project consulting, or are you really just investing in this broader reach stuff?
Both, right? Both. To be honest, the Kickstarter expert list that you see online, you got to know someone who knows someone who knows someone to be on it, and I really don't need to be on there.
I think they killed it. I don't know that it's still alive. Is it?
Oh, I recently checked.
Maybe
in like December.
Okay,
I don't know. Maybe it's gone now. That'd be kind of interesting if it's gone. Yeah, that'd be cool. But anyway, in terms of like projects, I do both. Right. I spend a lot of time creating systems and automations and making sure I know how to kind of scale the business in a way, right? Because at the end of the day, one person cannot do everything. And I know that one person can't do everything. So I have systems in place. Like, for example, with the group, the group that I run, right, the daily prompts, that's pre-scheduled out like 3 to 6 months at a time, right? It's the same prompt every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, every Friday, pre-scheduled out. When I'm accepting like the 50-ish new people every single week, right, I make sure to not only accept people, I collect their email, put it into like an email automation thing, and also send a welcome message personally from my Facebook page every single time. And that's all automated, right? I have like actual systems that I've installed, like it's a widget that I have that automatically does it. So like everything I do, I try to systemize as much as possible in order to make it run smoothly. So for example, too, with a live stream, if I do a live stream in my group, go straight to YouTube, go straight to all these things. But I also have a system where I copy that YouTube link, put it in my Trello board, and everything is automated in the Trello board. Right? I put it in, it tags my freelancer who actually like edits the podcast. Once that's done, and he checks off the box. It tags another person who's like a virtual assistant who helps get the podcast transcribed, and then with Otter AI, and starts going through the text to make sure that we're able to pull out the main things into the show notes, right? And then once that's done, checks to someone else, right? So there's all these systems going on behind the scenes because I know that as one person, it's hard to do everything, and I want to spend time doing things I love too, right? So I'm like building systems as I go.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that automation or process or routine ultimately can help one person get quite a bit done, right? And I think actually some of the steps that you were talking about in terms of sort of podcast or video editing and the captioning and those different steps, I think a lot of creators today aren't necessarily that's like a whole different video, but a lot of creators today aren't doing those steps to sort of maximize the reach of the content they create and sort of do it in a way that's not super heavy and complicated on themselves.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Sorry, one more thing is that it also frees up my time to interact too.
Right.
A lot of times people get bogged down in the creation and the scheduling of things that they forget to interact. And at the end of the day, it's like your conversation with someone that kind of builds a relationship. And that's what I mostly spend most of my time doing. Like today, I have on Wednesday, it's Wednesday that we're recording this, right? And I have a what are you doing Wednesday post. And there's probably 100 posts underneath that thread. And I'm going through and being like, oh, this looks really awesome. Oh, like this is really like evolved from the last week that you were working on this. So like there's all these things that I'm kind of building through conversations with the people in my group too.
Right. Well, and all sorts of value comes out of that for sure. I feel like, I obviously folks can take a look and learn more about your material, and you have all sorts of quotes, and again, it does a very good job of promoting itself, which is good. Technical difficulty. I don't know exactly how it got cut off, but where I was going when I got froze was essentially, I feel like we've covered it, and what I think would be interesting would be to shift gears a little bit for the last maybe 7-10 minutes here and talk about the market today, because obviously that's an area you're an expert in, right? So, I think when you're looking at Kickstarter board games today, what, and not really in terms of not trends in terms of board game mechanics or art theme, but like when you're looking at the trends in terms of how people are building their pages or marketing or sort of, what are the things that what are the trends you see that you think are most interesting or surprising from the last few months that you've like taken a note and you've been like, I should add that to my list. I think that guy did that cool thing, or that gal, or whomever. What stands out to you?
This one interview I recently did is that someone collected text, like someone's phone number, in addition to emails in their pre-launch phase as they were growing their list, as they were, building up that pre-launch audience, right, of targeted fans. And people converted like crazy through text. They sent out a first text on launch day and like, hey, the game is live, link. And then in the middle of the campaign, hey, we are X% funded, come back as if you haven't, link. And then one at the end of the campaign again. And apparently, I think it was about 70% of their total backers came directly from the text message, right? Because it was seamless. It was on the phone. They saw it. They clicked the link. They went straight to Kickstarter on their phone, could just check out right away. There was no like going on email and like groups and all these things. And that surprised me. Because from the lead generation side, a lot of people are spending money on ads or taking time with organic and things like that. And it turned out that their cost per lead when they were spending for ads, getting emails, getting phone numbers, turned out to be very kind of fruitful in the back end when it came to the backer side.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. I mean, I think at a practical level, people's response rate on a text is got to be pretty damn high compared to email and other venues, because it's not a commonplace. I can't name a single Kickstarter of hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds that ever sent me a text message about it. You know, people need to be interested to the point that they give you their phone number. But there are other trends with, you know, if you've been watching popular YouTube or creators from the last probably 9 to 12 months, maybe a little more because it was pre-COVID. There, you know, I forget the name, but there's the onset of that give out your phone number texting group where, you know, large creators from Ninja, like a whole bunch of big creators are like, hey, and if you want to talk to me directly, you can text me at blah, blah, blah. And, you know, I'll respond. And it sort of created this text network. I wish I remember. It's a company that was a big part of it, but it's creating this automated texting version of it as opposed to the more, you know, the email based one. And there used to be a company around. I wonder if they're still in business. Do you remember? It was called Thunderclap or something like that.
Yes. They're not in business anymore.
Yeah, but they were doing a lot of interesting things around. Hey, we're gonna get you to sign up in 700 ways, and then we're gonna get everyone to go do something at the same time by just blowing up everyone's.
Yeah.
But I think that's a great example. Again, it's
personalization. I think it's where it's kind of going to with marketing in general too, like being able to have that one-on-one conversation and make people feel like, you know, potential backer feel like you are talking directly to them. And, you know, understand their needs and know their needs in a way too.
Have you seen any good, so there's the heavy way of doing that. There's I actually stopped, but probably for my first 8 Kickstarters, every backer who backed, I emailed or messaged through Kickstarter and started a conversation with every person. I thought it was amazingly valuable because I knew them better. I learned how they got there. I learned why they liked the product. Half of them ended up being like, oh, I have a channel. Oh, I have this. Oh, I have this. And so like a huge number of them led to new opportunities or new connection points outside of just the Kickstarter. So that was great. But that's a lot of work, right? Like that was not a small amount of my time. And so that there's always that option. There's always the and you're using tools to free up your time.
Yeah.
But are there any good tools for personalization that you can think of?
That's interesting that you talk about the messaging because there's actually a tool for that now for Kickstarter creators. It is mostly
what's the name of the tool? Do you know?
I don't know if it's out of private beta yet, but it's under the brand of Stock Limits, stocklimits.com. So since I work in design and tech, a lot of the investment from agencies and from a lot of people around the world are kind of been putting money into figuring out ways to make money off of creators in design and tech, right? And so Stock Limits was actually one of those things, and now they're going to create a new brand, I believe, that does this automated messaging. But Stock Limits basically for design and tech is basically creating that fake urgency where hey, there's only 2 units of this left, and then it continues to move the number for you automatically on the Kickstarter side, right? If there's 100 units and there's 2 units left, then it bumps it up. Oh, there's actually 102 units, 104.
Oh, that's very sophisticated.
Yeah, so they do that. Now the new thing that they're doing is they're doing these automated messages. You can say pick first name and enter here. Hi, first name, just like in an email, right?
Right.
Thanks for being backer number
blank.
Fill in the number blank, and for getting reward name, right? So all these things are kind of being created, and a lot of these kind of automations are starting to kind of come into the design and tech, and probably will start bleeding into games.
Well, I mean, the board game sector in Kickstarter is one of the larger ones. Okay, and so so that was 2. What's the next one? What's your third?
So we talked about Stock Limits. We talked about
texting, personalization.
Yeah. So the question is tools, or the question is kind
Just
of cool new things happen.
cool. I mean, whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be a tool. Like, what's an interesting trend or an approach that you were
Yeah.
impressed with?
I think one of the most interesting things that has always kind of worked and people keep forgetting is just like messaging people in general, period. Right? A lot of people are scared to, for example, if someone follows you on Instagram, right? People are afraid to just say, jump into their inbox and say, hello, thanks for giving me a follow. Or like,
Right.
hey, what did you like about my game? Or something like that. People are afraid to do that. But honestly, it's always worked because at the end of the day, it's all about relationships, right? And how do you create relationships in this online world? At first, we went to conventions, right, and played games and
Sure.
talked to people who potentially would back it, or we went to like a board game cafe, or we did all these things. Now it's like, how do we take that stuff that's offline and bring it online? And it's just communication and forming those relationships. So not a tool and not new, but I think something that is worth talking about more because some people are still trying to understand that shift between offline and online.
Oh yeah, yeah, and especially, you know, with the current challenges. Okay, switching topics. What do you think of GameFound?
Ooh, I just had an interview with the founder of Awaken Realms, and we talked about GameFound. We literally just talked about crowdfunding GameFound, and I was like, that is the point. Let me ask you everything, right? I think GameFound is interesting because it has a very core demographic and core target market, right? Gamers who want to launch on crowdfunding. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity there because every single tool that they're creating now will be targeted towards this audience. Kickstarter, as a giant company worldwide spanning so many different categories, spanning, so many geos, they're trying to create something as general as possible to help as many general people as possible.
Sure.
Yeah, but with GameFound, I think the possibilities are there for it to be exactly what gamers need. But right now, though, fees are the same as with Kickstarter, no changes. So different payment processors. So some countries might be allowed that aren't allowed on Kickstarter.
Then you're gonna have
Things
to
that
ship
are,
to those countries, though.
pardon?
I'm just saying, like, a country with a payment processing issue that is not possible on Kickstarter, I would guess has a higher challenge for shipping and shipping issues if they're
Yeah.
if they're not in that group. But who knows?
Yeah.
But keep going.
Yeah, and like it's still, the audience on GameFound is still small, still really niche, like 400,000 people or something. So the kind of echo chamber effect of Kickstarter probably isn't there yet. Right now Kingdom Rush is on there. They're at like 200 something K. Who knows what they would have been like? It would have been like if it was on Kickstarter. Would the echo chamber effect be louder there?
Right. I mean, ultimately, is the audience, how much of the value and opportunity on Kickstarter is a reflection of the audience on the platform, all of the things tied into the platform, all the technology you're talking about probably will work on Kickstarter before it works on that platform. I mean, it's interesting. I interviewed the project manager there a month ago, and I mean, it completely fits the the category of people who love games making a crowdfunding platform for people who love games, right? So I think they definitely check those boxes, but it is interesting to see how it develops. I mean, on the other side of the fence is like people still using Indiegogo. Are there any board games on Indiegogo anymore, or is that done?
Recently, again, I also interviewed this one person who actually went to Indiegogo first and crowdfunded for their art, right? Before they had a full game, because they knew that coming to Kickstarter, they had to have something really polished. They didn't have the funds to invest for art. And so they went and did a scrappier campaign with different types of rewards like posters and stickers just to crowdfund for their art. And then they polished their art and came to Kickstarter and then got funded there, right? So that was really interesting to me. And
No, that is interesting. And I mean, also you're like assuming you're transparent about it. You're building your base, right? You're these people now participated in making the thing that has a chance to be the thing on the and so they're just more likely to have been paying attention for the extra year and be interested in promoting it. I mean, I do think that's a really interesting approach, especially that with that, the bar. Though, you have games like, oh man, I don't know, what is it? Cora Quest? Is that the right name?
Cora Quest, the
Yeah.
one with Dan and Cora right now.
Yeah. That art is not amazing, right? But it's a nice story. The product's engaging. I mean, it's a good example of how you can still have something that's compelling without it, like being over the top, like the upcoming Bloodstone. I don't, whenever this post, maybe that launched or not, but like it doesn't, there's a big spectrum between, over the top AAA miniature, all out art, Kickstarter only thing versus like a dad and his daughter making a game together and sharing it with a role. Like it's nice to see that that's still, the platform can still support those two things.
Absolutely.
What are some things you wish folks would do? Like what I really think somebody should try this. Like, is there anything that pops to your mind?
Somebody should try this. That's an interesting one.
From a technique standpoint, as opposed to necessarily like a specific game.
From a technique standpoint.
In other words, I think wouldn't it be cool if I think somebody should, I don't know, write a book and then do this, or try to launch a campaign with, that's completely stretch goals, or I don't know, wacky. If there's anything that you're sort of.
Well, not really, because I think everyone already the people I interview, at least, they come from such variety of backgrounds and variety of things they try. Some people only stick to the formula, right? Some people are like, you know what? This one guy who has a game up right now, he used Tinder to try to get people to play test his game, right? Just why not, right?
Sure.
If you beat me at this game, then I'll buy you pizza, right? Stuff like that. Right. So I think everyone comes at it from a different perspective, and it's always kind of interesting to see how creative people can get. Like this one other guy launched a game, and the game was a zombie based game. And so he dressed up as a zombie, walked around, right? People asked what's up? Another guy in my group, he printed the name of his business card on his mask. Right?
Oh, sure.
Right. So there's all these different things that people are doing and trying that, it's always great to hear about.
Yeah, I didn't watch the whole thing, but I was watching a little of, I want to say it's called Game Over, but the Netflix, or no, Amazon Prime board game documentary thing. Mm-hmm. And one bit was they were talking to the Exploding Kittens guys, and just, I didn't really pay much attention to that campaign other than it taking over the world. But, one of the things he talked about was how all of their sort of stretch goals and activities were about getting the people who were playing to hey, it's dress like a cat and take a picture as a cat thing. And hey, it's go find the blue object thing. And all of these sort of easy, fun, silly, viral activities that, continued to swell the audience. And that was sort of how it was because that's how they unlocked their stretch goals. It's hey, if we can get 1,000 people to dress like cats, we'll add another card or this or that. And, I think there are some really good examples of that kind of technique being effective. I mean, that's, maybe too particular of an example because it's one of the biggest, but in general.
Yeah.
But actually, this has been a long chat, and certainly thanks for being on. Is there any, before we close out, is there any particular thing you want to highlight for Meeple Marketing, or what you're doing, or just the Facebook group, or anything like that?
Yeah, well, if people want help or want me to take a look at their campaign or have any questions, they can just feel free to find me on Facebook, email, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, anywhere, and just talk to me. I think I'm pretty approachable.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're going to respond if they do, right? But thanks so much for being on. It's really cool to see, your journey, how you've sort of taken that, helping people, but also turned it into an actual business, and then talking about some of the things that are going on today. So thanks so much for being on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. This was great.
Yeah, and thanks everyone for watching. Okay. Bye.
Hey everybody, Edo here, and thanks for watching Gaming with Edo. Reviews over here on this playlist, League and Insider videos over here on this one. Subscribe, share, all that good stuff. But most importantly, play some great games. Thanks.